What if I told you that light and dark are the same thing? And the same for love and hate. Not opposites, not enemies, but two expressions of the same truth, just seen from different ends of the scale. Right? The Hermetic Principle of Polarity, it says everything is dual. Everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Now, this isn't esoteric jargon. This is the code behind your entire reality. And see if you don't understand it. You'll keep fighting your life instead of mastering it. Right? You'll keep resisting what's meant to refine you. Right? You'll keep judging yourself for being too angry, too soft, instead of learning how to channel that energy as fuel for growth. Right? Because if you look at it, most men are ruled by extremes. They chase the high highs, avoid the low lows, and they never realize they're trapped in a game that they don't even understand. And today, we're going to go deep and explore the principle of polarity, because this is one of my favourite books from I've ever experienced, and it has changed my life. The Kabbalion. Right? Polarity is a law of contrast. It's what gives meaning to everything. Without cold, there's no heat. Without failure, success is meaningless. And without death, life has no urgency. So polarity isn't just a concept, it's a tool that we can use in our life every single day. And when you learn how to master it, you stop getting pushed around by life. You become the one who can move between the poles with awareness, wisdom, and ultimately power. Right? And I've shared, quite a lot in my life, and I thought I was a broken man. I used to really think that I would never amount to anything, that, success would never be something I would have, or fulfillment. Right? In 1 minute, I'd feel strong, clear, alive. Right? The next minute, I'd crash out, full of fear, doubt, running away from people, just frustrated at myself for not being able to stay in the zone. Right? I thought I had to fix every single low so I could stay in every single high. Like the goal was just to delete one half of my life so I could just be floating around in bliss all the time. But that belief kept me stuck. Right? Because here's the reality that we don't get taught growing up. We certainly don't get taught this stuff in school, and we should. Right? You can't eliminate one pole without losing the other. So if you kill off the pain, you kill off the passion. If you suppress fear, then you dull courage. If you try to avoid darkness, then you'll miss out on your greatest power. And I learned this the hard way. There was a season in my life, and it was not long after I'd had my spiritual awakening, and I was just trying to be positive all the time. I was listening to all the motivational stuff, trying to be the high frequency guy, avoiding negativity like it was the plague. But see, inside, I was a war zone. My mind was fucking in chaos. Every time I felt anger, I would push it down. Every time sadness, raised its head, I would try and numb it. Every time fear crept in, I shamed myself. And see all that suppression? That didn't raise my vibration. It made me fake, disconnected, powerless. And then, until there was this situation where everything boiled over, right? There was something happened in my family, and I'd been bottling it up for months. It would have been, right? Pretending everything was okay, smiling through it, just telling myself, I'm being all spiritual. Right? Then something small triggered me, and I just fucking snapped. I exploded in a way that shocked me and the people around me. And see, after it happened, I sat there feeling ashamed. But also, I was wide awake, because after I had calmed down, I'd went and sat in isolation. I'd reflected over the situation, but I'd also reflected on what I had learned and been studied over the past, probably been 2 years at this point, right? And this was a massive turning point in my journey, because I realized that I wasn't weak because I had darkness. I was weak because I refused to work with it. And this was the moment that the principle of polarity stopped just being a concept and became part of my living reality. Because I stopped trying to be light all the time. I started embracing both ends of the scale. So instead of shaming my anger, I started to use that as fuel, for example, like the gym. Instead of avoiding fear, I started letting fear be my teacher. And instead of rejecting sadness, I let it open my heart instead of close it. I started to feel everything. And the crazy thing was, the more I did that, the more balanced I became. Not less emotional, not more dramatic, but more stable, more centered, more grounded, and also more healed. Because I wasn't swinging widely between the poles anymore. I was just standing there grounded in the centre. And that was a massive moment where things really did start to change for me. Right? Because you don't feel crazy, right? You feel contrast. Most people live in confusion because they don't understand how their mind works with duality. In psychology, this is known as cognitive dissonance. Right? This is when you're holding two conflicting ideas or feelings at once. Right? See, conflict is not dysfunctional, it's data. When you feel torn between wanting comfort and craving growth, your psyche is not malfunctioning. You're simply experiencing the pull between two poles. Right? And as Carl Jung, he went deep on this. He said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. So what does he mean by that? He means integration, not avoidance. Right? This is the path to power. See, your shadow, which is your anger, your shame, your fear, that isn't there to sabotage you. That is there to complete you. And when you suppress the opposite pole, you fragment your personality. You become fake and fragile. And when you learn to hold both ends, that's when you can access true power and become unstoppable. Because if you look at nature, right, every force in nature has an opposite and it uses it. Right? In physics, this is called polarity, right? Or geosymmetry. Electricity only flows because of a positive and a negative charge. Magnetism works through its north and its south poles. Cells communicate through excitatory and inhibitory signals. Even when your heart beats through contraction and relaxation, right? One without the other is death. And let that sink in. Right? If nature uses opposites to create life, energy, flow, why would your life be any different? Right? In peak performance psychology, this shows up as emotional agility. Right? There was a doctor, Susan David, she's from Harvard, right? And she said that high performers aren't those who stay positive all the time. There's those who skillfully process discomfort and still act with intention. Right, so if you feel fear before a big move, that's not a problem. That's polarity in action. Because, see, your brain stores emotional states and patterns. Fear and courage, same neural network, they're just different activation. You can't have one without being aware of the other. Right? And your body is always seeking balance. Right? Your body is constantly regulating heat, hormones, heart rate. Too much cold, your body shivers. Too much heat, it sweats. So your emotional system works the same way. If you suppress one extreme, like for example grief, it'll build up, right? And the pressure and it'll flip into rage or numbness. So the key is integration, not denial. Okay, and if you look at the law of emotional contrast, you don't know joy until you've known sorrow, right? And peace becomes, sacred only after the chaos, right? And as Carl Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Pain brings awareness, and that awareness lets you recalibrate your pole. Right? The key is awareness, not resistance. Use the negative charge to spark the positive action. Because you're not one side of the coin. You are the whole coin. Right? And this is when people have their a spiritual awakening. For me, it was very profound, right? But spiritually awakening isn't about choosing the light. It's about becoming the observer of both the light and the dark. That's what it says in the Kabbalion. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. So what's the meaning? Fear and courage, like I said, the same spectrum. Love and hate, same line. They are just different intensities of the same energy. Right? Light and dark are the same thing, just different degrees. Hot and cold, same spectrum. Difference is in vibration, not substance. Right? So polarity teaches us that nothing is static. Everything exists on a sliding scale, a spectrum of vibration. And the key is, if you're experiencing something that you don't want, you can shift to the opposite. You are never stuck. There's always another pole, another vibration, another option, right? Duality is the illusion that teaches you oneness. Right? Polarity is not here to divide you. It's here to show you your fullness of being. Because you are both strength and softness, fear and stillness, love and pain, heaven and earth. You don't transcend polarity by escaping it. You master polarity by embracing both ends and choosing how to move in between them. So basically, you transcend both and choose, yeah, where am I going to stand in this? Right? This is the teaching of alchemy. You don't destroy your shadow, you transmute it. You raise your vibration from fear into courage. You turn and look at rejection and you turn it into redirection. Because when you judge your low moods, your shadow emotions, or your dark thoughts, you're forgetting the law. You're trying to live in light while rejecting what birthed it. So the practice is you witness it, you accept it, you transcend it. Notice the fear, right? Breathe with it. Notice your grief, hold it with compassion. Notice your anger, channel it through integrity. That's not weakness. This is divine power choosing form. Okay, and if you look at the Stoics, right, they didn't fight opposites, they mastered them. Okay, Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is classic polarity wisdom, right? Obstacle and opportunity are two sides of the same principle, right? So a Stoic warrior doesn't chase good and avoid bad. He understands both are part of the path. In Epictetus, he taught his students that freedom doesn't come from controlling events, but choosing their meaning. You get angry, good. Right? You now have a fire to refine. You face loss, good. You now see where you were attached. Pain isn't the enemy. Misinterpretation is. Right? Polarity isn't something you manage, it's something you master by framing it correctly. And if you look at Eastern wisdom, right? The samurai, the monk, the Taoist, they didn't seek balance, they trained for it. Right? And Bushido, right, which is the way of the samurai, which is the way of the warrior. Two poles are always honoured. Ferocity and grace, discipline and flow. Right? A samurai was trained to be ruthless on the battlefield, yet write poetry under a cherry blossom. Why? Because both were expressions of the same source. Right? In Taoism, the yin and the yang symbol holds the key. Each pole contains the seed of its opposite. They aren't enemies, they are co-creators of harmony. Right? And if you look at the Shaolin monks, they embodied this through Kung Fu. Hard strikes follow soft movements. Power comes from relaxation. Stillness gives birth to precision. If you try to suppress one, you lose both. But if you master both, you become the storm and the stillness. So, if you want to really step in and become a spiritual warrior, train your light by confronting your shadow. Expand your love by understanding your hate. Sharpen your peace by dancing with the chaos. And this isn't just about philosophy, this is embodiment practice. Right? And if you truly want to step out of your current identity and take on the identity of an awakened savage, right? Mastering polarity is becoming the man who can hold both. You've been taught to pick a side. Be soft or hard, peaceful or aggressive, spiritual or practical, stoic or emotional. Right? But that's not the reality. The awakened savage is not a man of either or. He's a man of both and. He holds fire in one hand and stillness in the other because he knows real strength isn't controlling life, it's commanding yourself through both sides of it. Right? He doesn't collapse when things go dark. He leans in because he's trained in the dark. He doesn't chase the light. He becomes a vessel that radiates it without denying his shadow. Right? Psychologically, he integrates his whole self. Right? Scientifically, he knows that opposites create energy. Spiritually, he walks as the observer, not caught in the swing. And stoically, he frames every obstacle as a sharpening tool. Right? And in the way of the East, he moves through chaos and grounded grace. He doesn't seek balance like a fragile scale. He embodies polarity like a forged blade. Right, so who do you become? You become a man who can sit with grief and still rise, who can hold rage and channel it into the calm, taking clear action, who can walk through confusion and still be able to choose alignment, who doesn't get trapped in one pole, but can live from the center. Right? You're no longer reactive. You're responsive. You're no longer split. You're whole. You're no longer a product of polarity. You're the master of it. And that's the shift. That is this wakened savage. And let's look at how we can train this in real time. You don't run from the dark. It's learning to dance with it. Okay, so polarity isn't something you solve, it's something you train. I'm going to give you some tools to use. Now, as I always say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. I'm just giving you tools that's worked for me. You know, some I use regular, some not so much, right? But it's up to you to decide. I'm going to go through a bunch here, let you pick. And if you want to incorporate all of them, then go for it, right? So, number one, right? Polarity begins with perception. If you can name your current energetic state, you can begin to shift it, right? So here's a 3-step process, right? What am I experiencing right now? Okay, then you ask yourself, what's the opposite pole of this, right? Then you say, how can I shift 1% towards that, right? For example, you wake up feeling doubt. What am I experiencing right now? I'm feeling doubt, right? What's the opposite? Trust. How can I shift 1% towards trust? Right? You breathe deeply. Write down one thing that you're certain of, right? You know, and then take aligned action from that place. Okay, polarity isn't about jumping to the opposite extreme. It's about those subtle, consistent, energetic corrections. This process will build emotional agility and keep your inner compass aligned. Okay? Number 2, sit with the opposite. Right? When a strong emotion arises, most men either explode or suppress it. This is your opportunity to sit in the fire, right? And then look for the truth within it, right? You know, when you feel triggered, just pause. Name the dominant emotion without judgment and ask, what's the opposite pole of this emotion? And then reflect, what is this emotion pointing me towards? What have I been resisting? For example, you feel, this intense irritation with your wife or partner. So instead of lashing out or shutting down, you pause and you sit with it. Right? You realize the deeper feeling is unmet need for intimacy or feeling understood. Right? So that frustration is just a distorted signal pointing you back to connection. Right? Because most reactions are just misunderstood desires. By sitting in the emotion and identifying the opposite pole, you reclaim choice. You stop being dragged by your emotional current and you kind of start taking control of the ship. Okay, number 3, do a daily duality check-in, right? Because your day is full of contrast, right? What you judge as bad may have been your biggest gain in disguise, right? And this practice can help you track that. Right, so at the end of the day, right, open your journal and write what challenged me today, right? What strengthened me today? Then connect the dots. Okay, for example, you write down, I felt overwhelmed during a team call, right? The strength. I took ownership, I simplified the plan, and I gained trust of the board, right? That one experience sharpened your leadership edge, right? So polarity isn't just internal, it plays out in your environment. And that when you do this check-in, it trains your nervous system to embrace both ends of the spectrum and then decode the lesson in the contrast. Right? It builds pattern recognition and energetic maturity. Let's look at the next one, number 4. Train in opposite pairs, right? Your body is the fastest place to encode polarity. You can literally rewire your nervous system through paired opposites in physical practice, right? Choose 2 activities that live in opposite poles. Okay, stack them back to back to create a deliberate energetic shift. Right, train both ends with full focus. Right, for example, session 1, you go train in the gym, heavy deadlifts, aggressive output. Right, then immediately followed by a 10-minute ice bath or a silent seated meditation. Right, so you learn to shift from full power to full stillness in minutes. Right, and this will, your nervous system learns adaptability. Right, you stop being ruled by intensity or stillness. Instead, you kind of command both. This is how you build emotional and physical resilience in parallel. Okay, number 5. So this is an emotional transmutation. Right, emotion is just energy in motion. Right, you don't resist it, you redirect it. Okay, so Step 1, feel the emotion fully, right? Fully feel it, no judgment, right? Then ask yourself, what is this here to teach me, right? What strength wants to be born through this, right? For example, right, you feel jealousy when a friend succeeds and you ask, what is this teaching me, right? I've been playing small. What quality wants to emerge? Drive, direction, discipline. You transmute the energy by starting the project you've been avoiding, right? Because most men fear their emotions, but you can turn them into fuel. And this isn't spiritual bypassing, this is energetic alchemy. Okay? So the next one, embrace the middle as mastery. Right? It's easy to get stuck at one end of the spectrum and call it your identity. But see, true mastery is found in the balance. Right? It's where both poles are integrated, not avoided. Right? So see for 7 mornings, right? Write this line. I no longer resist either pole. I embody both with awareness. And you reflect, where have I been over identifying with one side? And you ask, where can I practice holding both today? Right? So, for example, right, you've rejected ambition because it felt too spiritual, but you realize spirituality without ambition is stagnation. Right? So you reframe your drive and your sacred service, and you show up with full force, but aligned to soul. Right? So when you integrate poles instead of choosing sides, you become whole. Right? You stop bouncing between extremes and you operate from the centered authority. Okay, and last one, this is where you practice pole reversal language, and this is super important, right? Words hold vibration. Every phrase you speak reinforces a polarity, right? So you use this practice to flip the script in real time. So this is how it works. So catch yourself saying something limited or final. Flip it into the opposite pole without lying to yourself, right? Speak that new frame out loudly or writing. For example, I failed. No, I found what doesn't work. I'm lost. No, I'm in discovery. Okay? I'm stuck. No, I'm realigning. Language is a frequency setter. This practice doesn't ignore truth, it reframes it with power. So you stop casting victim spells and you start speaking from the creative authorship, right? These aren't just tactics. These are polarity tools if you truly want to be a spiritual warrior, right? And in fact, they help you succeed in life. So each one rewires your nervous system, each one expands your emotional range, and each one brings you closer to neutrality, power, and purpose. Right? It's not about eliminating the dark to live in light. Okay? You need to see that they're all part of the same current. This is polarity, right? It's not just some spiritual idea, it's universal law. And it's running your life whether you realize it or not. Every thought, every emotion, every choice is being shaped by your relationship to the opposite. Right? Most men get dragged about, but they bounce between moods, identities, decisions, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, never realizing they're stuck in a loop. But see, when you adopt the identity of that awakened savage, you see it clearly. You train in the tension. You find power in the paradox, right? You don't just fight the dark, you learn from it. So if you want to live with purpose, if you want to be more like a man who commands his energy, his emotions, his reality, then you learn to hold both, right? You're not just strength, but you're also the stillness, right? You're not just the light, right? You're the one who can stand in the dark, right? And still be able to lead. This is the path of the awakened savage. Now, if this hit you, please drop a comment, right? What polarity are you going to be leaning to integrate right now? Maybe it's strength and softness. Maybe it's ambition and peace. Maybe it's self-doubt and rising action. Whatever it is, name it. That's how you start mastering it. And if you're serious about this path, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a little like, give me a little comment. It all goes a long way. Because this is not just another place for theory. This is a brothership where we train, where we're training to rise. And we're just getting started. Okay, and as always, I truly love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being with me on this journey, and I'll catch you on the next one. Got a video here, and you can subscribe here. Take care. Bye.